A very good evening and welcome you all to the Stock Durbar. So today, before we start discussing about the Nifty's chart, so let's discuss few things about the macros and the quarterly results. So you guys might be aware, right, that there is a very high volatility in the market, right? Though you can see that the Nifty is, a trending bit lower since last couple of sessions, but the action is very strong as far as the cash market is concerned. The broader market, there is a lot of volatility, some huge moves on both the sides, right? And this is happening, like, see, there are a lot of things. First thing is the macros. In macros also, a lot of noise. You can see the budget is coming, so there are expectations around what will be there in the budget, which sector will benefit, which will not, right? Then the second thing, that is the crude oil price. Like, it's at a multi-year high, and the crude oil, directly affects the fiscal of the country, and a lot of companies uses as a raw material. So few of the OMCs uh, will, some of the companies will get ONGC and all some benefit, but overall, the higher crude oil price is not that good for our country, right? The other things are inflation, the rate hikes in the US, the tapering. There is very high inflation in Europe as well, if you can see the data. So these all things are playing from the macro front, right? In addition, the good part is the GST revenue is very good, right? The export was good over the last few months. So these are some of the positive factors. Now, if you look on the other angle, which is also playing well in the market, that is the earnings. So we are at the beginning of the Q3 earnings season. I think almost 10-20% of the bigger companies have reported. And I think the next week will be very crucial for earning. And after that, there is a budget 2022, right? So till now, major IT firms have reported their earnings, right? So for TCS, the revenue growth was very healthy, but you will have seen that the margins were a miss due to the supply side pressure. Coming to Infosys, like the revenue was a beat while the margin was in line, right? But the good part is that the management come up with the higher guidance for FY22. And if you look at the order book of Infosys in FY23 also, they will be able to deliver well. Wipro was a bit missed, though the expectations were a bit high, but overall it was a miss for the Wipro. But there also, like, the growth guidance as well as the new order wins were very good, right? If you come to financials, the HDFC Bank, Bajaj Finance came up with the decent results. And if you look on the consumer side, right, then Titan came up with a good update for its Q3, though the result is yet to be out, but the updates was very good. And one of the other major one, that is the DMart, that was a very average result. Like, the same sales growth was very muted, right? So this was all about the earnings as well as the macro. So a lot of things are going on at the same time, and so it becomes very difficult to tackle the market from that point of view. So as always, your best friend over here will be the charts. So we always tell that these noise, these macro things, the earnings will keep on coming, right? You need to be very attentive to that, how that will impact the overall growth scenario, overall market. That is fine, but the most important thing becomes the chart, right? How, what Nifty chart is saying, what are the distribution day count, moving averages कहाँ पे है, 21 कितना हम आगे पीछे है. So those all things become very important, right? So now if you look at the Nifty's chart, right, so in December, in around 1920 December, it made a low of 16,400 over here, right? Then within less than a month, there was a 1800 point rally, which is really good. Like, यहाँ पे थोड़ा ऐसा था नीचे की, भाई अभी क्या होगा मार्केट का, लोग बात कर रहे थे 15,200 जाएगा, 15,500 जाएगा, बट द टेक्निकल्स वेर देयर. द ब्लैक लाइन जो यहाँ पे है, दैट इज द 200 DMA, राइट? एंड द 200 DMA was there to support the market, right? So there was no point of losing the hope. The second thing over here is, during this rally, right, for less than 1 month, the distribution day count was not added for last 20 sessions, right? So today there was a distribution day. If you look at today's volume was high, as well as the fall was around 1%, right? So today we added one distribution day. So before we started this rally, there were around, let me clear this first. Okay, so there were around couple of distribution days that were added over here in the downside. So 3 distribution days were there. Out of that, 2 already expired, right? So those who of you don't know how the distribution day expire, तो उसके लिए क्या होता है, वहां से 25 ट्रेडिंग सेशंस जाना पड़ता है. Whenever आफ्टर 25 ट्रेडिंग सेशंस जो पुराने डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है वो लैप्स हो जाते हैं, राइट, दे गेट एक्सपायर. सो अभी 2 डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डे एक्सपायर हो गया है. वन विल एक्सपायर ऑन मंडे, राइट, द नेक्स्ट मंडे, एंड वन इज एडेड टुडे. सो द करंट डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डे काउंट इज एट 2. एंड व्हाई डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डे काउंट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, दैट इज टू ट्रैक द टॉप. जब भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डे काउंट 3, 4, 5 हो जाता है, दैट इंडिकेट्स अ प्रेशर ऑन द मार्केट. And if at that point of time Nifty breaches its 21 or 50 DMA, right, then you downgrade the market condition, right, to uptrend under pressure. But there are a lot of events, lot of noise. So your best guide will be using the Nifty's chart, right? So not only Nifty, like now we will start discussing the stock specifics also. So there also you need to keep tracking of your stock, right? So let's first look at the key charts. Nifty Bank. So Nifty Bank is giving a lot of support to the Nifty, right? Even in the last this 3-4 weeks rally, Nifty Bank was one of the top performer. If you see somewhere after making a low of around 34,000, it went about 36,800, right? So there was a strong rally, and with weightage of Nifty banking stocks higher in the Nifty, like this gave a very good support to the market, right? Let's hope it grows like this. So this is by mistake. Yeah. So after moving, or this, if you can see for last 4 to 5 sessions, right, the Nifty Bank index is moving sideways, right? But overall, it is supporting the market, right? Whenever the other indexes are, pushing the Nifty lower, the bank is able to hold above a certain level, that is about 38,000, which is good. I think the results of HDFC banks were quite decent, but I think more direction will be decided after the other big results like ICICI, Axis, and the budget is anyways very important, right? Okay. So next we can look at Nifty Auto. So over here also there is a very good rally. If you can see, there is a bit pressure in the two-wheeler space, right? The festive demand was not that great for the two-wheelers and the numbers were not very good. But overall, if you look at the developments, especially around the new technologies, right? Electric vehicles. So yesterday, Hero Motor was also doing well over the last few sessions, right? The Tata Motors, M&M, and yes, all of you are aware about the disclaimer, and it's a common always that any stock or index that I'm discussing, it's not a advice to buy or sell, right? That is just for the knowledge purpose. So whatever question you raise, we will reply on that stock. So that is also not a indication or a comment to buy or sell the security. So please keep the disclaimer in mind. Yeah, so similarly, the auto index, if you look over here, there was a very good rally, right? As far as the Tata Motors, M&M are concerned. Though there is some issue with the demand in the two-wheelers, but let's see how the things goes. Okay, so now let's do one thing. We will start with your questions, and then in between, whenever some sector specific question comes or some 2 to 3 stocks from the similar sector comes, at that point of time we will again discuss about the sectors. So with me, Wakar, my colleague, has joined. Also, our head of research, Mayuresh Joshi, has joined the webinar. So we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So let's begin with your questions. There is one comment that please zoom the screen. I think, yeah, I can't zoom more than this. Otherwise, we won't be able to see the price volume action. Okay, so chemicals and fertilizer stocks, as Sanjay is telling, see, fertilizer stocks do remain in momentum every time before the budget session, right? And especially this time, there are a lot of elections in some of very farmer important states like Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, right? The elections are over there. So even without that, also I think the fertilizer stocks do remain in momentum always during the budget time. See here also, if you can see RCF. So I think yes, here, right? This was during the February March, right? Before that also, before the budget, there was some momentum. So ideally these are the months where the fertilizer stocks remain in momentum. So the eye will be on how the government helps the farm sector, any subsidies over there and all those things, easy credits. So that will be important for the fertilizer companies. We will come up with our next week, you will be able to see our report on the budget expectation, and over there we will cover these all sectors in very detail, like what are the expectations, and if those expectations are met, then it might positive impact on few of the stocks, right? So we will come up with that report in the next week, and that will be published to all. Okay, so Aditya is asking to talk about the textile industry. See, textile industry, we have discussed multiple times. There are 3 to 4 key drivers, right? One is the China plus one strategy. The second is the improving demand from US and Europe, right? And now if you club both those things, China plus one, which comes to India, so we have entire value chain, right? As far as the textile industry is concerned, if you look at the full value chain, India has it, right? So increasing demand, China plus one strategy, plus the push by the government, the PLIs for the textile sector, the textile parks. Yeah, so this will also be a focus in the budget, that how will the allocation to the textile sector, textile park will be there, right? So I think many stocks are forming, some are at a very high, like let's say KPR Mills, if you can take, yeah, see that is at a high. But if there are few stocks which are making the base also. Let's say, for example, Welspun Industry. So this is our watch list stock, right? Yeah, see it is forming a base over here. The cup with handle base, it is forming. Right. So here 160 is the breakout. I think some issue with loading the that green lines that comes for the, yeah, okay. So overall the momentum is good in the textile sector, right? Yes, Arvind is also part of textile sector, Bimal, and Arvind is also doing quite well. It has crossed, I think, 150 level now. Yes, it has. And it has just given a breakout from a stage 4 cup base. So this is the problem that we have. So see over here, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So the higher stage bases are ideally not that great for the investment purpose, because we have told this multiple times that जब भी stage बनाता है तो early stages like stage 1 or stage 2 are best to enter the stock. जब भी higher stage का बेस बनता है, लाइक स्पेशली द फोर्थ बेस बिकम्स वेरी रिस्की, क्योंकि वहां से करेक्शन का चांसेस हाई होता है, और जब वहां से करेक्शन होता है तब स्टॉक ऑलरेडी अपने लो से बहुत ऊपर जा चुका होता है. से फॉर एग्जांपल इन केस ऑफ अरविंद, it is more than 200% of its 52 weeks low, right? In MSI you can see over here off highs and off lows. So here 52 weeks है. So 52 week में already 211% ऊपर जा चुका है और continuous base बना रहा है. So it has not given a substantial correction, right? Before moving ahead, जो हम बात करते हैं हर बार कि कोई भी स्टॉक जब ऊपर जाता है तब बीच में कंसोलिडेट करता है, इट गोज थ्रू अ फेज ऑफ कंसोलिडेशन, बट in case of Arvind that has not happened, right? And it has continuously formed base. So this is number 4, right? So there are the chances of failure becomes higher. See, there is nothing 100%, but what we are playing with only is the probability to win, right? We want to increase the probability to win in the market, right? To increase the value of our investment. And that is what the stage 4 ways, the probability decreases, right? And that is why we avoid stage 4 ways. Ideally, we try to avoid third also, but if all the other parameters are good, right? If the earnings are good, growth drivers are good, we do sometimes, take positions after the third stage base, but fourth, most of the cases we avoid. Also, you need to be careful that it is already 22% from 50 DM, right? Okay. So Prem Kumar has a question that how is it in a stage 4? See, let me give you a quick on that. See, जब भी कोई say for example ये cup with handle बनाया, this is the stage 1, right? And इसका low price over here is 100. The low of the base is 100. After the breakout, when the stock goes higher, say for example 130 tak gaya, 130, 140, and then it makes a flat base, right? So this will be stage 2 base. After that, when it goes to more higher, the number increases to 3, right? So this is numerical 1, 2, 3. Now the second method is the alphabetical, that is 1A, 1B, right? 2A, 2B. So when AB becomes, let's say for example, after a breakout, यहाँ कप विथ हैंडल से ब्रेकआउट हुआ एंड द स्टॉक गोज ओनली 10% हायर, राइट? सो द कंडीशन इज 0 to 20%. जब स्टॉक 20% से कम ऊपर जाता है एंड अगेन इट स्टार्ट्स फॉर्मिंग अ न्यू बेस, say for example double bottom, so this will be count as 1A and this will be 1B, right? So दो चीज याद रखनी है, 0 to 20, अगर 1 to 20% ब्रेकआउट के बाद जाता है तो स्टेज अल्फाबेटिकली बढ़ता है, 1A 1B 2A 2B, right? 2C. But when the stock moves more than 20% from the breakout, then the numerically 1 2 3 ऐसे बढ़ता है, ठीक है? दो कंडीशन है. The last condition is, अब आप सोचेंगे भाई रीसेट कब होगा? After this 4, when it will be the 1 again. So say for example in case of Arvind, let's take the example here only. Here the low is 105, right? For this base. So now if the stock moves below 105, let's say for example it makes a low of 100, right? And then it makes us a base from here, then we will name it as a stage 1 again. So it should undercut the low of the previous base, right? It should undercut the low of this cup base in case of Arvind to reset the base count. Like if you want to study this in detail, we have our learning articles related to it, and you can go over there. Manish Patel has a question on Onmobile and Nazara Tech. Okay, yeah, so these two stocks were in momentum today. I think after the deal of Microsoft to acquire a gaming company for 5 lakh crore rupees. जो आप लोग ये कैंडी क्रश वगैरह खेलते हो, so there are a lot of other games. So Microsoft bought that company in US for 5 lakh crore rupees, right? And so that's the reason around the globe the gaming company got some premium valuation today, right? So there was some quick reaction on the gaming firm, and Onmobile Global is associated with the online gaming, right? And that was the reason it hit a upper circuit today. अभी यहाँ पे breakout दिया है, if you talk about the technical, from the stage 3B cup pattern, right? So ideally it is good, but if you look at the price trend, that is a bit poor. Fundamentals are not that great, right? The ROE is very weak. So it becomes a bit risky, right, to take position just based on the news, as well as the a bit weaker fundamental, as well as the price trend, right? The price trend is only of 47, but yeah, the good part is the line is trending higher, so you can't count that as a major issue. But overall setup over here looks quite good, right? Let's look. Yeah, delivery percentage is decent, 40-50%. Yeah. So the stock is trading near its ideal buy zone. The second was about the Nazara Technologies, again related to the online gaming and those sector. So here also there was a 5% move. I think it is a upper circuit or what. Yeah. So yes, this is under surveillance. Maybe the 5% is the upper circuit over here. Not sure. But yeah, the move was quite good. It rebounded from 21 and 50 DMA. Right. So it gives you an alternate entry point, but I think there was no clear base before. So here also you can wait because the selling over here was a bit on the higher volume. Right. The volume had dried up over here. So let it give some chance to form a base. Right. यहाँ भी RS strength बहुत poor है, so just give some time for RS strength also to gain, right? But today's action was news driven. No way.
You can take a break. I'll take in a few queries right now, if it's okay with you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So for some queries on IT sector plus Praj Industries as well. Initially, can you show me the chart for Praj? Let's go with Praj first. Okay, Nifty IT is also fine. Nifty IT is also fine. So yes, even I mean, when the market was consolidating or when it formed a bottom and when it started rallying, IT sector was one of the key contributors, as we can see in the last month. And yes, it's holding around its 21 DMA because some key results was happening, like as the Rushit discussed, TCS, your Infosys, your Wipro, all your big names in IT came up with the results. A few had like couple of them had a good result. Wipro was quite a miss, but yes, I mean the outlook or the guidance given by the management is still pretty much positive. So let's see how the sector behaves around its 21 DMA. So it's currently resting on its 21 DMA. So let's see if it breaches the 21 DMA or rebounds it. We'll get to know in the next couple of days. Can you give me a chart for Mindtree? Yeah, after like moderate results or like I mean, Mindtree had just a beat on the PAT front, but across, like if you see on the attrition levels, I mean, attrition levels are a talk of the moment for the IT sector right now. I mean, quarter on quarter, I mean, the attrition levels are rising. Even for Mindtree, if you see the attrition levels was like 22% compared to 17% for last year. So yes, I mean, ID sector in terms of attrition is facing a problem, but yes, the guidance is strong, and but the result was kind of a like on like not like a beat, not a miss. So I mean, could see the reactions here. I mean, with the market deteriorating, even Mindtree deteriorated, and it's a breach of key moving averages, and I guess it's below its 100 DMA right now. I mean, 4 continuous days of fall. And I mean, even on volumes, like I mean, in today volumes was above average as well. I mean, what's the stage? What's the stage? I guess 2 or 3, 4. Yeah, so 4 really not advisable, as my colleague Rushit has said as well. I mean, stage 4, 5 are the later stage bases, and we are not. I mean, no one's like probably advised to go or enter the stock at that moment because it's a later stage basis. Can you show me the ratings for Mindtree? And so yeah, I mean, as you can see, I mean, with the later stage basis as well, I mean, your price strength is deteriorating, your buyer demand is deteriorating. So not advised to probably look at the stock at the moment. Let it consolidate. Let if the stage breaches, let it form like let the stage count get reset. So probably after that moment, the stock can be looked upon. Then KPID would be good as well. Yeah. Ratings apart from, I mean, the EPS rating looks really good. I mean, on the ratings front, but yes, if you look at, I mean, the breakout. I mean, the breakout was really successful, and post the breakout, the stock has rallied quite a few, and it's like very much above its key moving averages at the moment. So let it wait, let it consolidate. I mean, the story behind the stock remains really good, and plus let the stock come up with its result. Any new entry at this moment, when the stock is stretched from its moving averages, it's not really advised. Can you give me the chart for Praj? And saw like a query for Praj as well. Praj or PI? Mean, Praj, PI both. Okay. So Praj, yes, Praj just broke out. I mean, what's the stage, Rishit, for this? Yeah, stage one. Good setup, we can say, for Praj at the moment. We can say um, sustaining above its pivot, like 6% above the pivot. But yes, I mean, the price band that we like to work on is around the 0 to 5%. And right now it's above that. So won't be advisable at the moment. Plus, I mean, the ratings is good. And the EPS rating, the buyer demand. Um, the RS rating is fair at the moment, but yes, the RS line is trending higher. So overall, the setup is looking good. I mean, if it retraces and like comes near its pivot, can be like a good buy. Any other queries?
Yeah. So, Vakar, I'll just take a couple of minutes here. So, guys, can you hear me? Am I audible in the first place?
Yes.
Super. Yeah. So, I think a lot of questions were asked on a lot of sectors, right? And Rushit and Vakar, they try to answer that. I'll just add a few pointers from my end for all three: sugar, fertilizers, as well as specialty chemicals. For sugar, right, as Vakar was mentioning, it's a politically sensitive commodity. Now, with UP elections around the corner, the kind of announcements that can come, it cannot be a direct announcement because there are certain rules related to elections and election commission based filters and criteria as well. But generally, I think if you look at the core macro dynamics, and we have discussed this at length, I think in a couple of sessions like these. So the inventory levels which were there for the last sugar season, with good demand coming through and exports that a lot of Indian companies have done, should be relatively better. So I think last year, during last sugar season, we were almost at 10 million odd tons. We will
Ayush, I guess you're not audible.
Yes, I think the voice is breaking. So I think he was discussing about the sugar sector, right? And so what Mayuresh was discussing about the UP election and the connection, right? See, first the sugar sector was very cyclical, right? Which has now become a bit on the structural side, especially the ethanol blending. So that might have a very good plan by the government to blend 20% ethanol by 2025. So if you look at the current scenario, so this year it is expected that the companies will have a demand for around 300 crore liter of ethanol, right, for blending, and that is around 7 to 8%. तो अभी अगर इसको 20% पे पहुंचाना है तो इथेनॉल की डिमांड बहुत बढ़ेगी, and due to that what will happen, the sugar का जो inventory level है that will reduce, right, and once the inventory level goes down that will help the companies, sugar का prices बढ़ेगा, ultimately it will help the farmers, right? So this entire value chain is working quite well, and that is the reason. Plus there were some macro effects also, like Brazil में production कम हुआ था due to droughts and floods, and last year there was a drought, this time there was a flood, right? So उसकी वजह से sugar कॉफी के prices पे काफी international market पे impact हुआ था, right? And that is the reason the entire sugar sector is, in momentum. Both the reasons, the sugar as well as the ethanol blending plans by the government for 20% by 2025, right? And so many sugar stocks are trading at an all-time high and they are doing really well.
Yeah, very well explained. Yeah, hi. Very well explained with Yusuf. And I mean, yes, not just on the sugar front. I mean, the ethanol blending will happen on the sugar as well as on the grain side. So I mean, the target will come from both the end. But yeah, so with the demand remaining strong, and if we come back to the sugar sector, so like sugar companies had three streams of revenue, like up till now, sugar your ethanol blending, and your power. So sugar was the one which was like highly cyclical, like what Mayuresh and Rushit explained, like with elections coming up, or with macro developments, or with sectoral developments, that used to happen. But now, I mean, with Brazil like couple of years out of the picture because of the droughts and floods, like India exporting, and at the moment, like if you look at sugar prices, then companies will not even require that export subsidy provided by the government, because I mean the international prices is already above that level. So if you look at one leg of that industry, sugar, that gets completely sorted because of your sugar prices. Two, on the ethanol blending front, as Rushit rightly explained, I mean the current target around 7 to 8%, 25 ka target, which is brought down from 2030 to 2025 for 20%. So I mean with that story, and that is like a really high margin business. Sugar was like a cyclical margin business. That was like a problem for this company. But with ethanol blending coming into picture, with that a high margin business coming in for these companies, that becomes really positive for them. And power generation is like, yeah, that's a stable business going on with them. So like, I mean, more like in-house power generation for them happening for it. But it's more about this first leg and the second leg of the industry coming into play. Yeah, sorry, Rishit, to interrupt. You can go ahead.
Sorry, I've joined back. So can you hear me? There was some net issue at my
Yeah, so we are
no,
done
no.
with the sugar.
We're done with the sugar. We're done with sugar.
All right. I
Maybe
just wanted to put. I just wanted
Yeah,
to
you
put
can
a point. I just
put
wanted
your
to put a
point.
point that Swaraj Green Energy, right? A couple of days back, you might have read this article. This company is an unlisted one, but it is putting one of the largest ethanol plants in Maharashtra, or rather in Asia as well, 1100 kiloliters, and Praj is making it. Right? So I think the entire perspective which has happened is ethanol and ethanol based programs that will come through. And therefore, I think all these focus areas, right, in the budget, Rushit just spoke about that in the budget as well. I think it's going to be more themes, which can be farmer oriented. So fertilizers, right? That was the initial question asked. There is a lot of news that a substantial subsidy can get announced, anywhere between 18 to 20 odd thousand crores. But you need to understand the construct of this industry itself. So I think it's basically urea players and the others, which means players in the NPK, which is the nitrogen phosphorus aspects, and the diammonium phosphate business, which is the DAP business. So I think a lot of incentives are also doled out for NPK and DAP. But largely, I think fertilizer companies are those momentum plays which happen during budget, right? The Rabi season has been very, very good. So I think the next round which will happen is just before the Kharif season starts happening, which is typically quarter 1 results which are determined. Now, if you have a monthly pulse in terms of all different chemicals, their end products, and a few of the input price inflationary concerns that these companies are facing because of supply chain issues, because of dependence in terms of other countries or countries which they import from, coupled with the supply chain issues, all of them can have huge amount of implications when it comes to EBITDA. But is it a sectoral or a secular part of the business over the next few years? Absolutely yes. Because what we are looking at in terms of speaking to a lot of companies, reading through transcripts, me, Rushid, Vakar, Rashikar, even Yatisha and Rahi who are there on the call, and Pawan. I think all of us are basically trying to gauge what is happening either through con calls and getting reflected onto the charts. Therefore, I think when you're looking at this, it cannot be a single slate for specialty chemicals. There are end products which are very diverse, distinct, which have a lot of implications in terms of how input prices move. What is the competitive intensity? How is China plus one actually playing out in terms of demand from suppliers and expectation from the client side in terms of quality delivery as well? And therefore, leaders within these spaces can hold out. Similar is the story for textiles. I think the fully integrated players, right? हम जो बोलते हैं ना, कॉटन से लेके फिनिश कपड़े तक, तो यान से लेके फिनिश गुड्स तक, जिनके पास है, and a lot of companies possess those capabilities. Anybody who can have those processing facilities with them, which includes spindles, which includes rotors, which includes that high mechanized machinery as well, those companies can do well because they can manage their cost and their processing and conversion costs far better than individual companies which are dependent only on one part of the business. So a lot of these companies, if you would have noticed, are diversifying in terms of the end product use, the value-added products that they're getting into the market. Third, in terms of diversifying their input cost sourcing as well. And fourth, in terms of having a lot of captive utilization done, which means either waste power, WPPs, or captive use of power, which then reduces their energy costs quite significantly. Therefore, these spaces are very, very interesting. This China plus one theme will play out. And again, I think the allocations that the government has run to the PLI mechanism and backward integration that they are doing is going to work out wonderfully. One more aspect before I hand over to these guys is what happens in the budget, right? So budget mein kya kya ho sakta hai is more in terms of interpretation that we all know, right, for the last 1 year. But announcements in terms of the fiscal numbers are going to be very strong because itni spending hui nahi hai. Either because of the COVID reason, or maybe the government was just taking it easy and not pumping in too much of money and sticking that for COVID reasons and not able to move that money through in terms of creating those fixed assets. However, I think those dynamics on fiscal numbers, GST numbers improving, expectations in terms of tax collections improving as well, that bodes well for the economy. How they place themselves, and I'm pretty positive that it's going to be a balanced one, because it's going to be growth in that. There is going to be obviously some tadka when it comes to the local elections as well, some element, as I said, in terms of subsidies, either fertilizer or otherwise as well. And again, expectations laid out for what personal tax cuts. But my personal thing is that that might not happen in this budget, because we really need to strengthen our balance sheet at this point of time. But we are in a far better position. And therefore, I think the run up to the budget and post budget, what you've seen historically, is that the market tends to give away because the event is largely over. एक अच्छी चीज हो रही है कि earnings are holding up for India incorporation across sectors at this point of time, and India incorporation has deleveraged themselves tremendously well. So if you look at the last bull cycle in 2003 to 2008, debt equity was almost 1.6, 1.7, 1.6 to 1.8 के range में. We are almost at 0.6 or 0.7. So you can understand the kind of dynamics in this structural rally that we've been seeing, and earnings which can be supportive compared to the rest of the globe. So I think interesting spaces है, but defense as a space उधर अच्छा खासा खर्चा हो सकता है. Renewables पे government का focus will be very, very strong again. Expectations in terms of infrastructure spending, like the DIFC that we are looking at, what happens in terms of ports, announcements on the roads, that is going to be very, very clear. Defense spending badegi. You are expected to see infrastructure spending on capital account increase substantially. Renewables, I think that is going to be a huge, huge focal area over the next few years. And EV related, I think ये theme तो generally चलने वाली है market में, but a lot of announcements related to EV parts, which obviously there was one more question as well, if I'm not mistaken, on auto ancillaries. And a lot of these ancillaries which are catering to the EV side of the business, I think that aspect of the business and announcements in the budget in terms of budgetary allocations for infrastructure, charging, infrastructure, so on and so forth, will be very, very prominent. So I think these are also a few key themes on the budget area as well. So I think this was a few of my takes. Guys, you can carry on.
Thanks, Mayuresh. So I'll be taking 3 questions now. One is from the YouTube live, right? That is about, it's a small company. Panama Petrochem, yes. So it's just 1800 crore market cap company. And if you can see, it has formed a stage 1 consolidation base. The earnings have been quite decent over the last few quarters, but see, as far as I remember, so last month it was in a very good momentum. जब ये बड़ा move आया था, so there were talks about some of the big investors like Anil Gohel, Damani. These guys are have taken few position in the stock, and that was the reason for a very strong move for 2 to 3 days in the stock, right? But if you look at technically, the stocks looks quite strong, right? Because it broke out from a stage 1 consolidation base. So that is really great, a breakout from stage 1 base. The earnings front, if you look at the growth, that is good. The return on equity is of 25%. Number of fund holdings bhi bade hai, right? So overall, if you look, the setup for the Panama Petrochem is quite good. Let's check the checklist. Price trend थोड़ी weak है, group rank weak, but if you look at the RS line, that has moved higher. But see now what is happening over here, every time it is closing in the days lower, यहाँ पे एक consolidation कर रहा है stock. So it's just 3% from the pivot. So yes, it is, the stock is trading in the ideal buy zone according to the owning methodology. Okay. So next to, let me take some Tata stocks. So a lot of questions around Tata Steels and today's move in Tata Elxsi. So let's take Tata Elxsi first. So today's move was due to the very good result it reported yesterday after the market, right? आज stage 4 कप से breakout हुआ है. So again it's a risky, right? Stage 4, but the breakout is very strong. But main reason यहाँ पे ये था कि उसका जो key division है, that is the EPD, which is the embedded product design, right? There was a very good growth, 9% QOQ and 30% YOY growth in that. So overall, if you see, the net profit grew around 42%, right? And the revenue was also up more than 30%. Plus the management commentary on the increasing demand, the large deals for the automation, right? That was also very constructive. So if you blend all those things, you can, it directly reflects in the today's price move, right? Almost 10% move and a breakout from a cup base, right? So this was mainly driven by the result. It is slightly, I think, extended from the base, right? But anyways, it's a 4th stage base, so it becomes very risky, right? Okay, the second one is Tata Steel. So yeah, it had a dream run last year as far as the first few months or first half of the calendar year 2021 is concerned. There was a very strong move in the Tata Steel. But abhi kya ho raha hai ki the steel prices have bit softened, right? If you can look at the price trend of domestic HRC prices, so it is almost down from its peak, right? And the demand is quite stable over there, so that's not an issue. One good part is जो coal के prices बीच में बहुत बढ़ गए थे, so those have stabilized now. So the coal prices are not that high. जो बीच में वो issue हुआ था power supply का और coal supply का, so it is not the scenario. But overall, if you see for the metal sector, the prices for the steels have come down from the highs, right? So that is the reason the stock is a bit consolidating. But yeah, it has reclaimed its 50, 21 and 200 DMA, but still it needs a lot of repair. So this looks technically damaged, if you can see. So let it repair, let the 50 DMA start moving higher. यहाँ पे एक आध base बनने दो, उसके बाद analyze the result, how the Q3 numbers come up, what are the management commentary on the price strength, raw material price कैसे impact हुआ था, and what they are looking for the first half of the next year, right? So after analyzing those all things and after a base formation and a good breakout, you should look for the stock again, right? Okay, so
Rushit, there is a YouTube query on Venky, so if you want to take that,
sure,
and then we'll take the rest.
okay. So if you look at the setup of Venky's, right, it looks quite weak, as you can see. So somewhere in June 2021, it made a high of around 4,000. But since there, if you can see, the selling is on a higher volume, so it is getting beaten down. So बीच में इसने यहाँ पे 200 DMA also it broke. Right now, the stock is trading above its 250 DMA, but still the chart structure looks weak, right? If you look at the earning strength, that is quite poor. The EPS strength is quite poor. So you should try to avoid these kind of stocks, right? There are many ideas in the market. A lot of stocks are trading at 52-week high. A lot of sectors are doing really well. So this is what, O'Neill always teaches a retail investor, that park your money in a place where you can keep earning returns. So if you are invested in Venky's, so since last 6 months, your capital is getting drawn away, right? But in the last 6 months only, if you look at the textile stock, the sugar stocks, right? So they give a very good return. So that is why a regular profit booking, entering the new sector, following the sector rotation, kya group rank hai, kya price trend hai. So observing price trend becomes very crucial. So this is just a perfect example to look at this. no much issue as far as the fundamentals are concerned. The ROE is of 24. The fund holding is increasing, right? The earnings have been quite good over the last few quarters. Just the last quarter, it was a bit poor, but overall, it is good, right? But the stock looks technically damaged, and ideally, one should avoid, putting money in these kind of stocks.
And apart from that, I think it is too much divergence. There is too much divergence in terms of input costs, right? सोयाबीन prices क्या चल रहा है, broiler prices क्या चल रहा है, the young chick का realizations otherwise also as well. So I think there are too many ifs and buts that are happening. और थोड़ा भी news disruption यहाँ वहाँ हो जाता है. So I think that bird flu scare which happened, right? If you remember a few months back, I think that creates a sudden amount of panic. Similarly for shrimp players, like again, this is just an example, right? Where there was a few quarters back some issues related to Vietnamese exports in terms of quality of shrimps being exported. So I think all these becomes very, very difficult to both gauge and manage. So I think it's best that we leave to other stories within the space itself. Yeah. So I think there are other queries as well stacked up, I think.
Yeah, myself take a couple of queries. Saw a query on Sona Comstar, Sona BLW. Quite a times it was asked. Right, Mayuresh is discussing EV play again. So one of the bigger EV plays we can talk about. And yeah, it did break out from cup base, but was unable to sustain it. And it's currently trading around its 50 DMA. So your price strength is fair, but your RS rating is moving downwards. Not good on the EPS front as well. But overall, the story looks powerful. The Q2 results was good. It had margin expansion. Revenue growth was strong at 52%. Everything is there. Plus, the order book is strong in Q2 at around 13,600. Out of the 13,600, 60% of this is from EVs and mostly from passenger vehicles. Export related company, and everything on the fundamentals and on the qualitative front working with the company. But yes, on the charts, if we look at it, it needs to show some kind of price movement, some kind of momentum, but that's lacking at the moment. So let it show it, and then it can be a stock of interest for our viewers. The other we can talk about is
you can talk about GNA Axles since you're talking about. There is a query by Kalpesh Joshi as well.
And then we can talk about the real estate as well. Let's go carry on load DLFs. GNA Axles, GNA Axles.
So before you continue, Vakar, I think there is a very interesting thing happening on again the EV part, right? The e-mobility part of the business. So you would have seen a lot of players, whether it's GNA Axle, Jamna Auto, Greaves Cotton, Sona, as Vakar was mentioning. All of these guys are getting into these spaces. Minda Industries, which has done phenomenally well over the last few quarters. So I think there are a lot of these e-mobility stuff that these companies are looking at. And there is a very interesting thing which is happening is e-axles as well. So I think axle is basically something which is an integral part in internal combustion engines, but that will also continue, right? Because that part will be required. Though I think the requirement in terms of the electrical components related to that and how the electric battery fits on the entire driveline and the powertrain as well. I think that is going to be very, very important. But I think it's very, very interesting as a story. So that EV has become a buzzword. So मैंने अभी just वो chat में भी लिखा है कि EV कहीं भी डाल दो तो वो stock ऐसा it goes on fire, right? But how many of these companies will successfully be able to transition is going to be important, and therefore only few select leaders, and even we don't know at this point of time who will probably be just surviving at the end of 3-4 years. But pretty sure कि वो 3-4 company छोड़ के I think most of them might fizzle out. But let Vakar carry you through the GNA Axles.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you. So GNA Axles, not the stock. You should be probably taking interest in. The ratings are not at all good. if you look at the stock is nowhere near its heights. It's like nearly 50% of its highs. All the moving averages are breached. I mean, the funds are exiting the stocks. If you look at the number of funds, I mean, it's going down like every quarter and quarter. Shares holding by the funds is going down. So I mean, as we talk about, go with the institutional play. So if the institutional guys are moving out of the stock, that means that it's not a good play for the retail investor as well. And yes, I mean, if you look at today as well, I mean, the stock went down with volume. So not a good sign for the stock at the moment. Rushit, can you give me charts for like, I mean, the realty sector and then like Lodha or DLF, whatever comes? So I mean, reality sector has been the buzzword. I mean, lots of. I mean, if we talk, I mean, go like look into the news section or wherever we talk about. I mean, with the budget, like lots of expectation with the. I mean, affordable housing, your reality sector. I mean, if we talk about the tax reduction as well, there is like expectations to take a tax deduction on your home EMI from 2 lakhs to 5 lakhs, and then I mean increasing the size of your affordable housing like in your metro cities and your non-metro cities from like in the metro cities from 90 square like 60 square meters to 90 square meters, non-metro from 90 to 120. So all those things are at play, and plus with like in the real estate story playing in, so this becomes like after the, if we talk about like the EV buzzword or the other buzzword, this reality sector has been like the buzzword in the last couple of quarters or the last few quarters if we talk about. And like one of the leading players in the sectors like has been your Macrotech Developers or the Lodha Group if you talk about. I mean, your EPS has been fair, your price strength has been fair. It's been forming a new base at the moment. uh, so and it's been uh, trading somewhere around its 21 DMA, but I mean the moving averages are drifting a bit lower. So that's not a good sign for the company at the moment. So let it show the price trend. I mean the institutional holding with the stock is there. I mean the number of funds is like it's been skyrocketing, like it's 110% now. Like 137 institutions holding the stock. Shares held by the funds is also increasing. So another important thing that we can talk about the stock is like the EPS due in 6 days. So let's see what the stock delivers in the next 6 days. I mean, if we look at, I mean, the company updates for the stock, I mean, the bookings are rising, and on that front, that stock, I mean, the company is up there. So, but it needs to show some price strength at the moment. Also, you can take a couple of queries.
Yeah, sure. See, just that.
Again, in this case, just a 30-second stuff that I just wanted to address for Macrotech, Lodha, or Oberoi. I think the numbers were phenomenal, right? So the best way to gauge this is pre-sales. And pre-sales, what they had guided at the beginning of the year, what they've delivered for the first half, and their entire annual guidance in terms of sales that they would have delivered. I think they have almost achieved that, or almost about to achieve that in the first 9 months itself. Secondly, I think if you're looking at in terms of the conversion ratio, right? So the collection to the pre-sales ratio, if it is more than 50%, that means that the operating cash flows remain extremely strong for real estate developers, and a few of these companies are exhibiting that. So watch out for this. I think the trend is pretty obvious. If they're able to sustain this right over the next few quarters, the organized players, listed players, more consolidation is obviously going to give benefit to these larger players within the industry. Sorry, Rushit.
Hello. Yeah. So there was a question on Tata Power. Again, I need to use that word that's trending today in the web, Stock Durbar as well. That is the EV, right? So they are setting up a lot of EV charging stations in Delhi and across the country, right? So they have been one of the leaders as far as the Indian companies are concerned. As you can see, the Tata Motors is one of the leader as far as the CV segment is concerned. right? So these guys are also leading not only the electric vehicle, but also on the renewable front, right? So over the last week also there was news that they started a couple of solar power stations and all those things, right? So on the both the front, the EV, the power, right, as well as the renewable power. So it has been doing great on all the fronts. So now if we look at the technicals, so this is the part of our watch list, and this is forming a stage 3 consolidation base, right? And if you can look over here, see, there was a dried up in the volume. So while explaining the charts in the webinars, we always discuss this point that whenever the stock is consolidating, jab bhi stock consolidate hota hai and it, the volume dries up in between, right? So this is a very good chart setup, right? So if you can look at the chart setup, this is very good. So यहाँ पे volume dried up हो गया था, and again when on the right side of the base. So if you divide this into the two parts, right? This is the left side and this is the right side. So right side is after the potential bottom formation, right? So if you can look on the right side, again the volume has started gaining, right? So this is a very good signal that the accumulation is happening while the stock is moving higher. It has reclaimed its 50 and 21 DMA, and that is also a quite positive setup, right? So these things are important to know, but there's no need to rush to take the early entry, right? It is still 7% to pivot, right? Let the stock reclaim let the stock break out from the pivot. The breakout should be on the higher volume, and if that happens and the stock is in the ideal buy zone, you can look to invest or not in that stock, right? Otherwise, the fundamentals are quite good, though it were a bit weak over the last few years, but it has been improving, right? Also, the number of fund has improved to 516. So the overall setup looks quite good for the Tata Power. Let it break out from the base before you take the entry. If there is question on KEI, like multiple times, Rajiv has asked about the KEI, and his key question is regarding pyramiding, right? So a disclaimer before I discuss about the KEI that the stock is the part of our portfolio, and if you can, yes. So if you can see over here, it is forming a stage 4 cup base, right? So you need to be very careful when the stock is forming the stage 4 base. But the good part is that the 21 and the 50 DMA are quite close, right? It is not too much extended from these moving averages. And if you look at the number of fund holding is good, the fundamentals are good. And again, the theme of the pipes and housing and all those things that is working well for the KEI, right? So there is no problem about the setup. The only thing is, Rajiv, the EPS is due in 8 days, right? So according to O'Neill, you should try to avoid the stock whose earnings are very close, because the things are not then in your control. The moves can go anywhere, right? There can be wild moves at the time of earnings. You don't know what the real expectations of the big institutes are, and for what margin or what revenue they are playing for, right? And so it becomes very volatile what the management comments, and so a lot of uncertainty. And so you should always try to avoid the stock just before the result, right? Like 5, 7, 8 days before the result. So let the result come out and then see how the stock reacts. Vishal has a question on IT. So I think there are detailed discussion about the IT, right? I think we took the result as well as so specifically talking about the mid cap IT. So there were some miss in the results. So right, and that is the reason that they are a bit under pressure, right, for last couple of days, and some of them has breached. Yeah, Shravan Kumar is a commenting and question about the BSoft, and yeah, that was the model portfolio stock. The disclaimer is that we have exited the stock today as it had weakened on the technical front. It had breached its 21 DMA, so that's why we had booked some good profit in the stock. So now one question, last one question.
There was one question by Sunil Kamath, I think, on insurance companies, Rushit. So I think what happens, Mr. Kamath, is reinsurance charges, right, that you're talking about. Actually, the regulator has asked the reinsurer companies for rate hikes, which they have done at this juncture, right? Uh, and therefore, I think managing health insurance cost without proper hospital care is not possible. Second, I think I was speaking to a few players within the industry itself, and the claims, right? Even if the third wave is not very, very severe, and hospitalizations have not gone higher, I think the claims and the kind of buffering that they're trying to do on their balance sheet, you pick up any insurance company, life insurance in particular, are still elevated on the higher side. So I think all other parameters might be very, very good on a month-on-month basis in terms of new business premium, in terms of the value of new business margins, in terms of uh, the expectations in terms of solvency ratios getting maintained at this point of time, even with claims coming onto their balance sheet. I think the stickiness might still stay on these balance sheet for a quarter or two. So I think let's wait and watch for this entire play, right? Whether it's insurers, life, general, or the reinsurers in general.
Let's take one last question. So there is very repetitive question on FCL, that is Finotex Chemical.
और उसके बाद ऋषित एक टाटा एलेक्सी भी कर लिया है. आई थिंक प्रशांत ने वो 15 बार टाइप कर दिया टाटा एलेक्सी.
लिया हुआ है, हो क्या है, मतलब we had discussed Tata.
Prashant, can you have a look at the recording again if you don't mind, because we've already discussed that.
See, FCL, when we discuss, it is very well placed as far as the current trend is going on, because it mainly supplies its chemical to the textile industry, right? So it is into the textile chemicals, and we have discussed it a lot. You guys might have read a lot, and you have seen the price of the textile stocks, right? So demand of textile is growing, the growth is very good, and so for FCL also, the revenue as well as the earnings might increase from the textile sectors. The other sector that Finotech serves are home and hygiene, the oil and gas sector as well, right? So these are also doing quite well. So the oil and gas, the crude oil prices are at a multi-year high now, right? So it will be beneficial for them. The home and hygiene, especially after the COVID, the home and hygiene requirements have increased a lot, right? Especially in the hospitals, the corporate offices to reopen, and that's the reason the demand for the chemicals of the Finotex can remain higher. So that is one thing you should keep in mind. The setup is quite good, right? There was a stage 3 double bottom base. The breakout was good, right? It was tempting to buy. But one thing that you should note over here, and which is what not we like, is the number of fund holdings. So it is only 4, right? And the shares held by fund is very less, and that is also reducing. So this is the only one thing adding to some a bit poor EPS rank, that the fund holding is poor. So we generally tend to avoid the stocks that are having the less fund holdings, right? So we generally look for 8, 10 or above fund holdings, and the holding percentage a bit higher, right? But over here, that is not the case, and that is the reason we have avoided FCL in our portfolio. Otherwise, the setup was quite good when it broke out, and the this industry that it is serving is also quite well.
Rushit, we can take PI Industries.
Sure.
And just a pointer, I think Ashish was also pointing out Ashish Dubey on Radico. So Ashish, I think look at the rules that we follow at O'Neill. Even if the breach of the 50 DMA has happened, you can put Radico chart as well for a minute. I think the important crux and the criteria is that the breach has to happen with extremely heavy volumes. Now look at the volumes of Radico. I think the breach is happening, but with extremely abysmal volumes. I think the volumes have actually dried up. And it's very, very close to its 50 DMA. So I think we are monitoring that. It's not that we are not monitoring it. It's close just around its 50 DMA. There is a huge chance that it takes support. Maybe intraday breaches that, but takes huge support and bounces back as well. So two important criteria, as we've always mentioned. If you have not, I think have a look at our CanSlim level webinars that we put on our site as well. Obviously, the D-Day count, which is an important element of the entire ideology between the O'Neill methodology on 3 different structural aspects: on the main index itself, sub indices, and how sectors are performing. So if all three are cracking, like in the March fall, 20 fall, I think there is something structurally wrong with the markets. If one of the elements is okay, but two of the elements are working fine, right? It does not mean that structurally the entire market is bad. And third, I think the entire crux, again, when it comes to specific stocks on the third element within the sectors and leaders and laggards that we distinguish ourselves is how are volumes playing out. So again, two different criteria, Ashish, and for the benefit of everybody. If a stock is coming down with extremely low volume or consolidating, I think that's a healthy sign, because I think it is basically showing that stronger hands are still there in the stock. By stronger hands, I mean the I factor in canceling, which is institutional holders or extremely high net worth individuals are still staying put with the stock. On the other hand, if there is an extremely heavy volume activity and the breaches of moving averages are happening, and the entire sector is also coming down along with that particular stock, means that structurally something is wrong with the sector. And if something is structurally wrong, both leaders and laggards will crack down, as indicated by the price volume action. A third perspective to this is, which we have clearly given in the example in the canceling webinars, have a look at that, is the other alternative. If stocks are moving higher and higher, right, with low volumes, that again is a very, very weak sign, right? So any breakouts which are happening should also happen with healthy volumes or above average volumes. So always remember the rules that O'Neill has set. We are learning constantly, and we just wish to put forward this learning to you. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, Rushit, you can take PI Industry.
Sure. So last stop for the day, PI Industry. So it is under selling pressure. So if you can see over here, it has breached below its, all the key moving averages. It has breached its 200-day moving averages. And look at the volumes. The volumes are above average when the stock is getting beaten down, right? So that is one of the issue over here. But see, we don't like to, catch the falling knife, and everyone knows that at William O'Neill we don't catch the falling knife. So we will give some time to this stock, let it, repair the technical damage, form a base, थोड़ा fundamental improve हो जाए. Look at the price trend. It is 10, right? जब पूरा मार्केट अच्छा कर रहा है तब इसका प्राइस रिलेटिव स्ट्रेंथ सिर्फ 10 है, राइट? एंड इट इज बिलो इट्स ऑल द की मूविंग एवरेजेस. द ग्रुप रैंक इज वेरी पुअर. Buyer demand is also off C. So none of the ratings are good for the stocks, right? Though the earnings have been a bit consistent, but overall there is not much strength in the stock. So ideally, one should avoid this stock.
If you want to take one last one, Rushit, we can take that and then probably end the session.
Sure.
Maybe either Dixon or Naukri, whatever, your call.
Okay, let's take Dixon.
So before that, I'll just quickly answer Linga MP's question, CG Power, right? CG Power is a turnaround story, no two ways about it, right? The acquisition that Murugappa Group did via Tube Investments into that stock was very, very attractive, because the plants were functional. It was nothing that it was defunct in terms of the plants not being operational or anything like that. And it was just a matter of time that it just needed revival with stronger hands coming through. And Murugappa Group obviously is a very, very strong hand. Secondly, I think if you look at CG Power, right, an indirect way to play is that how we played as a clear disclaimer, what we've disclosed in our model portfolio through Tube Investment. Now, Tube Investments का जो engineering division है, वहाँ पे 31% of the revenues actually are contributed by CG Power. और अगर आप overall EBIT margin profile देखेंगे, so engineering division का EBIT profile is 10%. That is second best, again compared to the industrial section as well, within the Tube Investment balance sheet profile at 10% as well. फिर cycles, metal form products जो अलग-अलग चीजें बनाते हैं, I think they become part of that, and their again stake in Shanti Gear. So when you're looking at an SOTP, right, and that is typically how valuations are done. Core business, their investments into CG Power, and their investments into Shanti Gear, which again manufactures gearboxes, and you need to apply a holding company discount. तो आप 20% लगाते हैं, 30% लगाते हैं, average is somewhere anywhere between 25-30. Let's take a very aggressive approach. Even if you take a 35-40% and then try to gestate the numbers based on their investments done, I think there it still makes sense, because indirectly you're playing CG Power through Tube. Again, a disclaimer, we have that in our portfolio, subject to our targets and the stop losses that we maintain at O'Neill in terms of our fixed methodology. So I think that is something that I wanted to just put forth. You can carry on with Dixon and then we'll call it a day.
Sure. So this has been one of big winner stocks. So if you just look at the monthly chart of Dixon Technologies, see, after the fall in during that first month of COVID, there has been a one-way rally, right? Right from somewhere around 400 to 6,000. So there has been a huge rally over here in Dixon Technologies. See, if you can look at the management commentaries, they are venturing or they are present into a very good segment, right? They have a lot of collaboration, like the mobile companies. They have Samsung, they have Oppo, Vivo, the boat for the headphones. So a lot of companies. They also manufacture some of the good white goods for the parts for the Chroma, as well as a lot of other companies. So this has been a manufacturing house for a lot of Indian companies, right? And currently, the management is targeting that the revenue in the next year can be somewhere around 16 to 17,000 crore, right? And also they have converted a lot of their work in which is into the backward integration, right? So उससे क्या होगा कि अभी इस पे pressure आ रहा है margin का Dixon पे, right? Due to raw material cost, due to outsourcing and all those things. So अब एक तरफ revenue 16 to 17,000 crore बढ़ेगा, दूसरी तरफ due to backward integration the margins will also improve, right? As plus एक चीज है PLIs. So all the sectors that they are working on, the PLI scheme for mobile, laptop, telecom equipment, right? They also manufacture that boxes for Geo. So Geo ka Wi-Fi, like that is one of the trending, right? So uska jo router aata hai, that is manufactured by Dixon. So it is a well diversified, lot of clients over here. Revenue margins are poised to improve over the next year, right? And that is the reason it is getting a very high valuation. So now if you look at the setup, fifth stage ka base hai, too risky. Fourth, see, this is what happens in a higher stage basis. After the breakout from stage 4 base, so this was driven mainly by news. See, fall kaisa hua wo dekho. यहाँ पे गया, and if you can see, there was a sudden drop from here, right? Almost 20-25% drop from the high in just a 1 week. So this is what happens when the stock is at a very high stage basis. जब भी ये fourth, fifth stage basis से breakout होता है, there can be a cases. There are a lot of case studies where it has happened that 6th, 7th, 8th base तक अच्छे breakout हुए and that has moved higher like Bajaj Finance, right? But that are rare. So if this is among the rare, then let's see. But most of there are chances that the high stage bases fail like this, or there is a sharp correction, right? And a lot of retail investors get shaken out at this point of time. So wait for the stock to form some good technical setup, and let's see how this quarter result and management commentary, which is more important for the stocks like Dixon, comes up. So thank you all. So there are a lot of queries which we answered, few went unanswered. So if you have further queries, you can write us anytime and we will get back to you, right? So thank you guys. Thank you for joining the session. I hope this was very helpful to you and we were able to answer your lot of questions. Thank you.